Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave, your man behind the screen, and I am driving back to work from my last delivery on a day where I'm pretty much guaranteed to get some overtime. Not that I'm complaining, mind you, those sweet, sweet overtime dollars help me pay my bills, so you gotta love it. Today, though, I want to talk to you guys about getting savage. More specifically, I want to talk to you guys about a time where I got savage and doled out what I feel was some undoubtedly cruel but justified bit of DM savagery. In fact, the biggest dose of DM savagery I've ever doled out in my 20 plus years of tabletop gaming. So before I get into that, of course, a bit of context to the situation. This took place about 14 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, I think. I can't remember exactly. It might have been a little bit sooner than that. But definitely no more than 14 years ago. And I was up visiting a good friend of mine for his birthday. This was after I had moved back down to the San Diego area. I was up visiting a good friend of mine for his birthday. And he wanted to just spend the weekend playing D&D. And I said, you know what? Fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. I'll run the game for you, dude. My birthday gift to you, I will run a 2-day marathon D&D game for you and all your guests. And we did that. And it was, it was all right. Honestly, the game itself wasn't particularly memorable. We had just kind of a standard, pretty basic setup. I whipped the game together fairly quick, designed it to be easily playable within 2 days. And it was essentially the exploration of a dead city, which would lead to a dungeon crawl where we would encounter the final boss of the dungeon. I think I made it a lich. I can't really remember. And the main reason I can't remember is because we never got to it. More on that later. But long story short for that, basically trying to get this group set up, trying to get this game going, we had a good number of people playing. I think I had 5 players in total, so a good number of players. Nothing too difficult to deal with, but we were all young high school kids at the time, so either late high school, early college generally. So you can imagine, there's a lot of fooling around, a lot of joking, a lot of acting the fool, and not a lot of actually getting the characters made and all that stuff going on. But eventually, I was able to kind of whip the group into shape. Everyone got their characters made, and in the end, if my memory serves me correctly, we ended up with my friend whose birthday it was played a rogue. We had a ranger, a monk, a wizard. Excuse me. Oh, God, excuse me. I'm sorry about that. So, rogue, ranger, monk, wizard, and paladin. The paladin is the one I remember the most, because the paladin is the one who drew my ire. So, we get the party made, we get everything together, we start playing, and the problems began almost immediately. Now, I'm not going to give any names for this video to protect anonymity, not that it particularly matters. But suffice it to say, all the people there were friends of mine, we're all mutual friends, but the one who was playing the paladin, he was the newest to the game, and he didn't want to just play a fighter, so we figured, paladin isn't too difficult to get a grasp on. More than half the people here have a good grasp on the game, and the one person, apart from this problem player, who didn't have that great a grasp on the game, still at least had some grasp on the game. He wasn't completely fresh to it. And I will admit, this was part of my mistake here was the fact that this friend of mine was completely fresh to the game. He'd heard of it. He'd seen us play it once or twice before, briefly, but he never played it himself. So he was essentially pure fresh blood, and we were running this as a high-level game. We're talking about, this is a 3rd edition game, we're talking like 15th level. So it's a high-level game. And there's a lot of stuff for him to keep track of, so, that made things run a little bit slowly, which, of course, it's to be expected, it's fair. The new players jumping in head first into a high-level game for something he's never done before, so we were all ready to take some time to kind of teach him the ropes, help him kind of learn, give him hints, things like that. But the problem came when we soon realized he wasn't interested in any of that. And see, this friend of ours was a troll. He was a troll before trolls were really much of a thing, really. A complete antagonizer. He loved to get under people's skin, he loved to get people's goats. And he decided to bring this attitude into the game. And now we tried to be fair about it and kind of laugh about it, write it off and stuff when he started, cracking stupid jokes like, oh yeah, it's it's funny, all right, well, let's keep playing. But it very quickly became apparent that this was going to be constant. We're talking damn near every single person's turn, including any time I was doing something as the DM. He would be interrupting. He'd be cutting in with some dumb comment or some stupid hand gesture, something to distract the crowd and get a laugh for himself. And after a couple of hours of that, it started to wear thin. So I told him, like, hey, dude, you're slowing the game down a bit with the jokes. I get it's fun for you, but it's kind of slowing everything down. Tone it back a bit. Let's try to focus on the game. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, man, sorry, I'll do that. And for a little while, he did, but it didn't take long at all before it was right back into the problem. Now, under normal circumstances, I would have said, fuck this. If you don't want to fucking fall in line, you can leave. Get out. But this was not my house. This was my friend's house and my friend's birthday party, and everyone here was staying the night, and this guy lived in the next town over. So we were kind of in a situation where we had no choice. We couldn't boot him out of the game because he would have pitched a fit. And then we all would have gotten the parental whip crack over our heads for excluding him. So we had no choice. We had to involve him. So I determined at that point, I was like, you know what, fuck it. Whatever he does, I'm going to make it through this game. I'm going to do my best to make this game work. This is my friend's birthday. This is my best friend's birthday party. I'm going to do my best to make this game work for him, to make it fun and memorable. Well, the fact that I can't remember any details of the game itself should tell you about how well that worked out. So we continue on for the rest of the day, constantly dealing with the distractions, but the distractions soon became the least of our problems. It quickly became clear that he was just going to be that problem player of legend that everybody hears about, but nobody is really sure if they've ever actually experienced something like this. Well, I have. I can tell you these players, they fucking exist. They're out there. Some of these war stories that you hear, like veteran players and veteran DMs and GMs telling you, are very real. This guy was, well, for one, not playing to the Paladin class really all. He was the party klepto. If something shiny was available that I put in that would have been good for another player, like perfect example actually, our ranger was playing an archer, specifically playing an archery build. And I included, after a certain fight, a very nice bow for him that was going to be really helpful and fighting the final boss. So I had it to be, though, that of course everyone would work together to find stuff, you know, make the search checks together and all that. Everyone's making their individual ones. And unfortunately, it so happened that this problem player was rolling really damn well on his search checks. And he rolled by far the highest roll while they were inspecting this worn down armory. And he found the bow buried under the rubble. Now the bow was damaged, it would need to be repaired, but he found it under the rubble. And he handed it over to the ranger, who was also a bowier. He was like, "Oh, you know, you think we can repair this?" I was like, yeah, I could definitely fix that. The wizard chimes in, "Oh, I mean, I could probably fix it with magic. You know, I've got such and such spell. I think he was going to use mending on it." "Okay, cool." He gives it to the wizard mends it, and, you know, being that the ranger's an archer and the paladin is a two-hand fighter, the wizard mends it, and I mentioned to him, as you're mending it, you start feeling this pervasive sense of magic coming from this bow. "Oh, I want to identify it." He identifies it and finds out that it's, you know, a really good, strong bow for the ranger. It was like a blessed bow of some kind. I can't remember exactly how I made it. I just know it was meant to be really helpful for him to be real effective against the final boss. Like, everyone was going to get something that was going to make them more effective against the final boss and the undead creatures, the really powerful undead creatures living in this city. So the ranger's like I see his eyes light up, and he's like, I can see the visible excitement on his face, which was immediately dashed when the problem player says, "Oh, sweet, I'm glad I found that for myself." And it's like, "Whoa, no, hold on. Think about this for a second. How do you fight?" "Oh, what do you mean? How do you fight? What is your paladin mostly used to fight?" "Well, I use my sword." "Okay, yeah. You have a magic short bow, right? To help you when you need to fight at a distance?" "Yeah, but this is way better." "Okay, buddy, dude. Who in this party uses bows more? You or the ranger?" "Well, I mean, he does, but yeah, he can have the short bow. His bow's already better than the short. Dude, give him the good bow. I put it there for him." "Well, fine, geez, all right, be that way." You know, you could tell my patience was wearing really thin at this point. So he was being the greedy bastard, trying to take every single item for himself, trying to make everything about him, me, I. The entire universe, the entire game had to revolve around him. All of this in the face of the fact that he's a guest at our mutual friend's birthday party, who this game is mainly being run for. And I gotta give credit to my friend whose birthday it was. He took this shit in such good stride. He was just like, "You know what, man, I mean, fuck it. You know, I'm just going to do my best to have fun with this." You know, because I talked to him afterwards that evening, after we, you know, were tired and went to bed, which was around like 1 in the morning, when his parents finally told us, "Guys, it's 1 in the morning. Stop talking and go to bed. We have to work in the morning." And we were, like I said, high school to early college. We were a little bit of inconsiderate assholes. But, you know, my friend took that in real good stride. And, you know, I got to give maximum props to him for that, because my patience was really wearing thin. So we played for a long time, too. When I got up there in the morning, you know, my parents, this is before I drove, actually. I learned to drive pretty late. But my parents, you know, my mom took me up there because she was going up, you know, she wanted to see him and say hi to and visit with his family a little bit, because, you know, he's a childhood friend of mine. So we stopped up there. We got there around 10:30 in the morning. And basically within half an hour of my being there, I started getting them made with the characters. So by 1 o'clock we had started. So 12 hours we'd actually been playing. We were supposed to be done with half the campaign by then. A little bit more than that, actually. We were barely done with a quarter of it because of how disruptive this guy was. So I was not in a happy place. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I didn't get good sleep that night either, because I was sitting there thinking, all right, I'm gonna have to try to find a way to speed this along, to kind of shorten this up so we can actually finish. So we're going along. Next day comes. We get up fairly early. We get our breakfast. We hang out, play a little bit of video games before we get started, and then about 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, all right, hey, yeah, let's go back to the D&D game, And I had taken the problem player aside and was like, all right, dude, I tried to write off his shit as, like, in the friendliest way I could. Like, hey, man, I know you're getting real into the game, and I love that. I'm really glad that you're having fun. But it's too much. Dial it back, because you're making it so that nobody else is able to really do anything. You're kind of stealing fun from everybody else. I know it's because you're new to this and you're real excited. Just dial it back and give everyone else a chance to play too. Give everyone else a chance to have that fun too. And he was understanding of that. He's like, oh yeah, dude, I get it. I'm sorry. I got overexcited. My bad. I'll do my best to dial it back. And to his credit, for the first couple of hours he did. And that was easily the best time we had at that table, was that first couple of hours when they finally found the entrance to the dungeon, the underground, this little underground area that led to this Lich's sanctum. And they're going along, and they're like winding their way through these ancient tunnels, and it leads down into the Underdark and all this crazy stuff. This is really the only area where I can remember anything of particular note about the game itself, too, because it was the only area where I wasn't having to manage this guy. But of course, after a while, the same stuff started happening again. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, as they say. So the problems start happening again, and the other players are really starting to get annoyed by it. I'm getting irritated by it. He's starting to try to take everything for himself again. He's starting to interrupt people, cracking stupid jokes, all stuff that would be, not all stuff. Some of it's stuff that would be perfectly fine in moderation, but it's not coming in moderation. It's happening constantly. Non-fucking stop. And so some of our players start clocking out. The monk and the ranger both, they've had enough, so they're just sort of sitting there, with an elbow on the table, and their face resting against their fist. Their turn comes up. Oh, it's my turn? I'll punch the abomination. Okay, you're gonna flurry of blows? Yeah, sure. How many do you need to roll again? 3d20. Oh, I got 2 hits. Here's damage. All right, Ranger, you're up. Oh, I'll just shoot him with the bow. All right, roll your attack. I missed. All right. So yeah, half the group was checking out now. The other half was trying to kind of keep spirits up. I was still trying to keep spirits up despite my frustration turning into legitimate anger now that this friend of ours was being such a prick. And at a certain point, it became obvious, very clear, that this was not any longer just him being an overexcited new player. The first day, for the most part, it was pretty clearly he was being an overexcited new player. He was still being a dick, but it was majority him being an overly excited new player. Now it had become clear because the sort of way he carried himself changed, the way his tone of voice changed, the way he was acting at the table. Just those little subtle changes came in where it immediately clicked in my head. You're not just overexcited anymore. You're doing this on purpose. You think it's funny. And I know that really well. I don't know if I'm necessarily still really good at recognizing it, but I used to be amazing at recognizing when people did this, because 2 of my younger siblings did this every day for the entire time they lived with us. So, suffice it to say, I became real good at recognizing that. So when I saw those subtle shifts, I knew immediately, God damn it, he's fucking doing this on purpose. And at this point, at that realization, I made one more polite appeal to him. Hey man, I gotta admit, I am getting a little frustrated. I gotta keep talking to you about this, but, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. I do think that I still think this is you being a really overly excited new player. Can you please tone it down? You're cutting into everyone else's fun. I know you're not meaning to do that, even though I knew he was. I was still trying to be polite, trying to do the good GM thing. So I know you're not meaning to do that. Can you please ease up on that? Yeah, dude, I'm sorry. 5 minutes, he doesn't do it. And then immediately it starts up again. I'm like, I fucking had it. So they get in the dungeon, they get to a mini boss fight. And this is a room that I had set up for them to both equip themselves to be prepared to fight this lich at the end of the dungeon, but also I set it up with a couple of devious little traps to sort of force them to expend some of their resources, because the items they were getting were really powerful. And now granted, this lich that I was using was also really powerful, and he would have some minions around to help him fight, but I still needed to make them burn some more of their resources before that fight came. And I set the room up intentionally in such a way that if they were doing too well, which despite this disruptive player, combat-wise, they were still doing really well. They had, been working pretty decently as a team, despite the fact that this new player was intentionally acting an idiot at this point. But I set the room up in such a way that if they got there and enough of their resources had been depleted, I would actually sprinkle in a couple of things to bring them to the level I wanted them to be at to fight the lich. And if they weren't depleted enough, I would replace those things with a couple of traps that were really well hidden, or a couple of hazards that would force them to deplete their resources. And if the latter had not happened, or if the need to use those hazards didn't come up, then I would have set it up narratively in such a way that the hazards, like things like falling stalagmites or stalactites that got unstable and fell, or a poison gas trap or something, somehow got triggered during the fight and missed people, kind of thing. I would play it off as like a narrative near miss, build the excitement up with it that way. But they ended up needing it, so I left the traps in there, and they got triggered, and they spent enough of their resources to the point that I felt it was comfortable. And also in this room, the reason why it was booby-trapped and I included those hazards was this particular mini-boss was guarding an old treasure hoard. And in fact, it was an undead dragon. It was a ghoul dragon who retained its intelligence enough that it would virulently defend its hoard from when it was alive. So they killed it off, and they were looting its hoard. And in this hoard was not only where I had put the equipment, the pieces of equipment that I wanted my friend whose birthday it was to find. I remind you again, this is the friend who I was primarily running this game for. It is also where I put the Holy Avenger that the Paladin this problem player was supposed to find. And at this point, I knew immediately what was going to happen. He was going to go straight for the treasure pile while everyone else was healing up, and he was just going to start digging through it. Sure enough, he found the weapons that I was going to give to the rogue and was going to keep them. He was like scooping a bunch of gold into the bag of holding he had and a bunch of this stuff, and he found the Holy Avenger. He's like, oh, hell yeah. But I told him at a certain point, I was like, hey, you filled up your bag of holding, though. You have no more room to put your old sword in there. Because he still wanted to keep his old sword. He was a greedy bastard. He wanted to keep his old sword so that he could sell it later. Even though we weren't going to be doing anything after this dungeon, he wanted to do that. So I decided, you know what? This is it. This is the perfect time for me to unleash some just punishment on this guy for, at this point, intentionally being an asshole. And I did what to this day is the most savage little trick I've ever pulled as a GM. And I have to admit, part of the reason why it ended up being the most savage, most brutal bit of in-game punishment I've ever doled out was because of a stupid move he made. A move that either way I was hoping he would make, but that I didn't expect him to. I didn't expect him to be this stupid. So I tell him that, like, as he's digging through the hoard, I say, oh, you notice as you're digging through the hoard, you notice another leather bag kind of poking out from the bottom of this pile. When you pick it up, it looks a hell of a lot like a bag of holding. It looks almost identical to the one you have. And I do make mention, like, but as you hold it, something about the magic feels a little bit weird to you. He's like, oh, it's whatever, man. It's just a bag of holding. Cool, that's fucking sweet. I want to put my new sword in there. I tried to be fair. I tried to be fair by mentioning the fact that it felt a little weird to him to hold it. Because it wasn't a bag of holding. And savvy viewers who know something about D&D know what I just included in there. It was the Bag of Devouring. A cursed item that mimics the Bag of Holding and has a line of teeth on the inside because the Bag of Devouring is actually the mouth of a creature that lives in the astral plane and eats anything, or damn near anything, that gets put into it. And what does he decide to slide into this magical portal bag? The Holy Avenger. And not only that, he sticks his hand all the way into the elbow. So I told him, it's like, oh, you're like sticking your hand all the way into the elbow? He's like, yeah, I mean, you said like sharp things can cut the bag if I like just drop them in, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I want to like just like set it on the bottom. Okay, I need you to roll a d20 for me. Well, why? Just roll a d20 for me. He rolls a 2. Unfortunately for you, you didn't heed that strange feeling you got when you picked up and started inspecting this bag, because this is not a bag of holding. And as the teeth clamp down around your arm is severed at the elbow, as the Bag of Devouring eats your right forearm, hand and all, and your Holy Avenger. The silence at the table at that moment was deafening. And he just looked at me with a little smirk. What? You just picked up a cursed item and stuck your Holy Avenger in it. That was not a bag of holding, it was a Bag of Devouring. I told you that there was a weird feeling about it, but instead of actually deciding to ask the wizard to check it first, you just stuck your hand in there. And you rolled so low that it bit your hand off. And ate your Unholy Avenger, because you stuck it in too. That's not fair, dude. Perfectly fair. I told you that there was something off with it. You ignored me. Oh, it's fucking bullshit. That's not fair. It's perfectly fair. Especially considering how you've been fucking up this game for everybody. It is perfectly fair. So you're down to one hand, and you lost your new sword. What are you gonna do? Fuck this, I'm done. I'm done. And he left. Now I'll fully admit, it was a bit of an asshole-ish thing for me to do. Justified, I still feel, but absolutely a dick move on my part, and it's not the kind of move I would recommend. Given the situation, though, I'm still happy with having done it. My friends, my other friends were all happy with having done it. Spirits were raised at that table again. And the great thing is, ultimately, it worked. I don't know if this friend of mine ever played the game again, but afterwards, a couple hours afterwards, after we were done, after he was finished stewing, he came up to me and he said, "Yeah, man, I'm sorry, I was being a dick. All right, I didn't listen to you and I should have. I'm sorry about that." And we both, and I apologized, like, "Hey, like, I'll admit it was kind of a dick way that I handled the situation too. But I mean, I thought it was the only way I would get you to listen, because you weren't listening to me so far. So I appreciate the apology. I accept it. And I hope that you're not too pissed at me for doing that. We're good. So we were still good. But that is by far, the most savage I have ever gotten when it comes to a punishment in D&D. An in-game punishment, specifically. Now, some people who I've told this story to in the past have looked at that and, like, mentioned, like, "Oh, I mean, that's not that savage. Like, you should have just, like, killed him. If you killed him, that would have been savage. Blah, 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 this and that." Well, I could have killed him. And, that would have been, one way to handle it. But if I had done that, that would have been, it wouldn't have had the impact, let's say. And the reason why it wouldn't have had the impact is because if I had killed him, well, he was the party paladin. There was no cleric in the party. There was no druid in the party. There was nobody in the party who could cast any kind of magic to bring someone back from the dead except for him. So that would have been a permanent out for him. I wanted the punishment to be one that would absolutely impact him in the game, force him to spend something to get back into the game. In this case, he would have had to have expended a spell to restore his missing arm, and force him to now fight at a handicap of his own making because of a bad decision he made. A bad decision I helped set up, but so in that instance, because the option for him to continue was still there, but because he would have to pay something in-game, pay a tangible resource in-game to actually do that, the punishment ended up being a lot more effective than just, "You're dead, now you leave the game." So, with that said, friends and gamers, and most especially fellow GMs, what are some moments that you have had where you've really had to bring the hammer down on a player? And I'm not just talking about moments where you bring the hammer down in the sense of you just have to tell the player to leave the table. I'm talking about, have you ever had a situation like this one I was in where you could tell the player they had to leave the table, but it wasn't really an actual viable option for you? Remember, like I said, this wasn't my house I was at. I couldn't tell him, "Hey, you're being a dick, you need to leave the table," because where's he gonna go? He's at my friend's house and lives in the next town over, and his parents aren't gonna give him a ride until tomorrow, so he just would have been sitting there stewing the entire next day, the entire rest of the first day, and the entire next day of the game if I had done that. So have you guys had any situations where you had a player that you couldn't actively kick out of the table, you couldn't use the standard means to fix the problem with, where you had to think out of the box to repair the issue, or think out of the box to find some kind of solution, be it amicable or savage. Let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you think of this video. Tell me what you think of this story. Remember, you know, I do expect that some harsher criticisms may well come my way. I fully admit what I did was still a dickish thing to do, despite how much of an asshole my friend was acting like. But do remember, too, this was also 14 years ago. I've never done anything like that since then, and I never would. I mean, I guess I can't really say I never would, but the chances of it ever happening are super slim, like to the point that it's basically none. So if you like my content, please feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to check out more of my content if you would so desire. If you do subscribe, do make sure to click that bell notification icon while you're down there, and make sure that you set it to notify all. YouTube has recently changed the way the bell system works. The notification no longer defaults to notifying all, but defaults instead to only notifying when some videos go up. So don't just check that with my channel if you're subscribed to my channel. Check that with the other channels you're subscribed to as well, because you may well be missing a lot of notifications if you've clicked that bell, but you didn't check to make sure that it is set to notify all. However, if you want more consistent and more reliable notifications, check the description below to follow me on social media. I am currently on 4 major platforms. You can find me on all of them, and I will regularly post all of my updates there anytime I upload a video. And yeah, with that said, dear friends and gamers of all stripes, it is my sincere hope, as always, that you roll high, role play well, and as always, game on. Have a wonderful day.